Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a forester. My name is Ann Koven. I teach Master of Forestry Conservation students, and I co-founded the Mass Timber Institute. My topic is mass timber expectations by architects, designers, and engineers. The Grand Ring for Osaka Expo 25 illustrates these expectations, understanding the potential for mass timber to reduce carbon footprints of buildings and faster construction, possibly through prefabrication and modular construction. Ross Beardley looked for historical precedents for mass timber and found it in a study of 42 brick and beam buildings using heavy metal timber construction in Toronto. 100 years of changing use has proven it to be an adaptive building typology. Mass timber is made today by fixing or gluing many pieces of wood veneers and mostly dimensional lumber in Canada to form larger pieces, such as panels and beams. Cross-laminated timber and glue lam are the best known and have capacity to build taller buildings than was possible previously. Europeans, notably Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and Scandinavia, invented mass timber products in the 1990s. Stora Enso, the leading forest and wood manufacturer, built new headquarters in Finland's largest mass timber building. Unlike the Europeans, Canadian governments and the forest industry give modest support to Canada's nascent mass timber sector. One of the first mass timber buildings publicized was UBC's Brock Commons student housing in 2017. More research funding is needed for universities and colleges to support the sector. The climate crisis motivates architects about sustainability. Ecological footprints are associated with harvesting wood and with the growing demand of global urban populations. You all know the carbon leadership forecast about needing to build a new New York City every month for 40 years. The climate crisis motivates, I think I missed one. Decarbonizing requires life cycle analysis to account for embodied carbon in building and for its operation. There are questions about the biogenic carbon of biological materials like wood, the standardization of methodologies, and comparisons among concrete, steel, mass timber, and hybrid buildings. Sustainable forest management is the law in Canada for limiting harvesting and requiring forest regeneration on public lands, which account for over 85% of our land base. The legal safeguards are many and include the protection of non-timber values, public participation, and third-party certification and audits. Environmentalists help create and improve sustainable forest management since 1994. However, the protection of the boreal forest remains a problem. Global environmental protest is focused on woodland caribou in the boreal forest, threatened by disruption and loss of habitat. Douglas Cardinal, whom we respect greatly, designed this mass timber house for Indigenous communities. It was built in New Brunswick. The White Feather Forest Pekanjikam First Nation in Northern Ontario is seeking investment to build a small mass timber mill supplied from their traditionally managed black spruce forests. Innovation is displayed in Dialogue's prototype for a 100-story, zero-carbon hybrid mass timber building. Tall buildings will always be needed in densifying cities, and following the US, 18-story mass timber buildings are now permitted by building codes in Canada. However, 7 to 12-story mid-rise residential and commercial buildings, such as the Affordable Housing Project in Kitchener, are identified as optimal for sustainability, structural performance, and construction efficiency. Mass timber education and skills training are in the very early stages. U of T's Academic Wood Tower at 150 Devonshire and the Lawson School for Sustainability at Trinity College, both hybrid mass timber buildings, are inspiring students. The College of Carpenters and Allied Trades is a leader in mass timber training programs at its Woodbridge facility. Supply chains are developing slowly. Quebec's Nordic Structures built the first cross-laminated timber manufacturing plant in North America in 2010, but we are still importing mass timber products from Europe. More research, again, is needed to help grow the sector sustainably. Supply chains are also limited by Canada's mindset on exporting wood from our northern forests south to the United States. Mass timber manufacturing adds about 40 times the value to the wood we harvest, What about the sustainability calculus of harvesting less wood with higher value? Element 5 is the only cross-laminated timber plant in Ontario, suggesting that adaptation construction is slow. Architects are designing the buildings, but developers are cautious about potentially higher costs, gaps in the building science, and concerns about such things as fire, despite extensive testing by the National Research Council and others. Will mass timber replace concrete and steel as a greener construction solution? No, but this innovative concrete beam and set into a cross-laminated timber floor panel with reinforcing steel points to the future of hybrid buildings concerned with decarbonization and research. Despite Canada's vast forests, there are few manufacturers. Only about 7 might actually be operating in Canada today and 16 in the US. The value of the Canadian mass timber industry in 2023 was under $400 million, small compared to the $34 billion Canadian lumber industry. My forecast is that Canada will continue selling most of our lumber to the United States and importing more expensive mass timber products from US manufacturers made with our own wood. Mercer is gearing up at its mass timber plants, this one in Spokane, to become North America's largest producer of cross-laminated timber and glulam. Mass timber is under pressure to prove its potential. The first wave of excitement is receding as we face the reality of adapting slowly a new construction technology with big promises for decarbonization and sustainable development, and optimistically, more research into renewable, biologically based materials that can be sustainably harvested. Thanks for listening.